Well, good morning. I have a grim topic to discuss, particularly in light of the Grateful Dead class, which I want to attend as well. The syllabus for the course is already on the website, the OLLI website, some basic readings, and the specific readings for the course are being posted as well. So we don't have to worry about an actual publication of sort. You folks can download the readings that way if you're interested. This course examines the long-term consequences of the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, and its meanings for contemporary Spain. Given the legacies, political, economic, social, and cultural, of the 40-year dictatorship of Francisco Franco, which did not end until 1975, and the repercussions of that dictatorship resonate into the present. It was a war that invoked the participation of Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, in which Britain and France played crucial roles, and in which the United States was complicit, along with the Vatican and the Spanish Catholic Church. It was a war that had a huge impact on a whole generation of artists of various types, playwrights, writers, novelists, poets, everything from Pablo Picasso and the cellist Pablo Casals, to the writers Ernest Hemingway, George Orwell, just to mention two examples. It was a war that summoned the idealism of a whole generation, in which thousands of volunteers, men and women, came from various parts of the world to participate in what they perceived to be the good fight against the forces of fascism and inequality. It was a war of thousands of refugees, some of whom were able to escape the Nazi death camps in occupied France, became part of the French resistance, but some of them did not escape. Over 12,000 Spaniards died in Dachau, Mauthausen, and other Nazi death camps. It was a savage conflict, and that's one of the key points of the course, is trying to understand how anti-Franco forces murdered more than 6,000 priests, monks, and nuns during the war, but also to try to understand how after the war, over 120,000 people were killed by Franco's death squads, a war in which still 30,000 people or so remain unaccounted, and in which bodies are still being found as we speak in various parts of Spain. No wonder then that the war reverberates into the emotions of present-day Spain, despite the efforts of a veneer of silence over what happened during the war and in the aftermath of the war. It is a war that continues to evoke tremendous emotion, whether it's in the films of Pedro Almodóvar, or whether in the feelings found of the novels and writings of those who have been able to recover the bodies of grandmothers, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, and the like. But very importantly, and this will cover primarily in the second half of the course that deals with the period since the 1970s, is to ask fundamental questions about remembrance. How do we remember a past, particularly a past that is controversial? What about the question of retribution? How do we deal with war crimes, or what other people would consider war crimes, in a context in which people essentially don't want to discuss what that retribution should be like? And thirdly, what about representation? How do we represent this war in textbooks, for example, for school children? Not to mention in museums that in some cases, like the History Museum in Barcelona, that pointedly, graphically describes the war, as opposed to the museum in Oviedo, Asturias, where a major strike, a precursor to the war, was smashed by a rising military man by the name of Francisco Franco. And there you will find no mention of that strike, no mention of the war, despite the events that occurred there, as opposed to the Museum of Guernica, inspired, of course, or the point of inspiration of Picasso's famous painting. I trust that many of you will participate in the course. It's not about military history. We're not going to do battles and armaments and weapons and this sort of thing, but rather to try to understand the wellsprings of that conflict, its international dimension, and its consequences for contemporary Spain. Thank you very much.
Alex, thank you very much. Will you spend a few minutes to talk about the trip that you and I have designed with Cal Discoveries to take OLLI members to Catalonia in June 1st to the 15th?
The trip that we have designed is based in part on this course. That is, the ways in which the war impacted, particularly on that part of Spain, in which the last bastion of resistance took place against the Franco forces. We'll visit museums, we'll visit historical sites related to the war, but we will also have the opportunity to discuss the war as it is being debated in present-day Spain, particularly in that part of Spain that has a very special relationship, Catalonia that is, with the arc, if you will, of Spanish history. We'll also cross over onto the French side, given the fact that 500,000 Spanish refugees went over to the French side, only to be put into camps. And then later, once the Nazis were able to defeat the French, ended up often in Nazi-run camps in southern France. And we'll discuss and visit those sites as well. But we'll also engage how the past interfaces with the present in that part of Spain. The ways in which Barcelona, Perpignan, Gerona, and other cities, in a sense, participate silently at times, in other times much more vociferously in the past. Whether it's in the ways in which businessmen participated on one side or the other, who produced some of those great sparkling wines we know cava. We'll visit wineries and this sort of thing, not only to taste the wine, of course, and so on, but equally important, the ways in which present-day Spain echoes the past, including in its tourism. Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very
Sure.
much.